morning, everyone. We will be very much keeping to time today because the first sessions that we'll be doing will involve people who are joining us online. And so to pay respects to them, we will be very much cognizant of them. I'd like to welcome them and you here. I'll do a formal welcome a bit later on, but as is the appropriate protocol, I'd like to ask Uncle Glenn and introduce Uncle Glenn to welcome us to country. So, Uncle Glenn.
Good morning. My name is Glenn Timbry, and the reason when I'm doing this and I'm doing my culture, I'm Uncle Glenn because I'm a teacher. And I teach my children, my son here, young Glenn. And we come from straight across the bay at a place called La Perouse. And it's named after the French explorer, Jean-Francois Galloup de La Perouse. And straight across the bay over here is a place called Kurawal. And that Kurawal is a very important place because that's where Governor Phillip first landed on these shores. 18 years earlier, in 1770, Captain Cook landed at Cairn Hill. And he buried a man by the name of Forby Sutherland there. And over there they met the Aboriginal men and they said they were Guigal. They're Guigal. And after they buried the men over there, they stayed away from there. They didn't really go back there and stay there because they're a different spirit there. And all them years later, the first fleet come. And they first come ashore on the other side of the bay at Kurawal. Bennelong was there. He was one of the first to meet him. And they had a taste of rum, and it was like fire, fire, fire. Now, women were saying, don't take anything, don't touch anything, poison, poison. And they had biscuit, it was like crumbs, they didn't like it. Governor Phillip got back on the boat, and the ships were still coming. And then he went further north, because it was documented by Cook, because Cook sailed into the harbour. But he didn't land there. He only looked, and then he left. So then Governor Phillip sailed around there, and then he landed on what we now know as the Man of War Steps. And he started right there. And they all followed, and right there. And it took a long time, some time, for a connection to be made. But that first connection was from the Aborigines that we had here at Botany Bay. And he first started doing signs and talking to him by a man by what we now know as Bennelong. Bennelong carried many names, Boogletro, Boinba, Boinba, and that's because of the many different dialects and different clans, see. But what Governor Phillip recorded here was all the clan groups and chieftains. Out here at Botany Bay, you got the Guigles. And just here at Botany, you had the Guinegals. We come from the Bidjigal. So from Bidjigal to Pemulwuy to Tedbury, and then down to Timbray, recorded by the French in 1819. Old Timbray had a son. He had 3 kids, but one of them he named Joe. His Aboriginal name was Thumble, Joe Thumble. It's recorded in the blankets list too. All the clan groups that are around, the Camarays, they drew the tooth of the tribe, of the front tooth. There were many of them, Guigles, Guinegals, Bidjigals, Wongals, Tugagals, and they all had meanings. Now us, the Bidji, the meaning of Bidji is all the flat areas, all the way down through Lake George, and therefore right across the Murrumbidgee. Now what I'm telling you is true from this land. Now the Camaraeagle is the chief of the Camarays. They had a lot of people there, very powerful. And he was the one that drew the tooth. And they almost wiped out. And they was on the northern side over in the Manly area. And they become Kamilaroi, no place off. Many different dialects, many different groups changed. Wiriari, the dialect Wiriari, recorded way out at Dubbo. The same language in that language is in the Wyandors. You see? The Korean Mulligan. Right out at Wagga, Gunialgal. The man Gunialgal. It became Gunigal Wiradjuri language. And it's the foundation of this land. And that's why I'm here, because I'm a bloodline descendant. After everything happened, from 1915 they showed Throsby from Liverpool, down through Appin, all the way down. And they said the name of their tribe. They called the place Allawar. Allawar, then it became Illawi, Illawari, Illawarra. Allaway, the suburb, it's the Aboriginal word. It means we live or stay here. Then they named that place after the tribe that spoke the Korean Mulligan, that done the Yulang ceremony in the domain. And the name of the tribe is Wollongong. And that's the original name of Wollongong. You take the O's out of Wollongong and you put in A's and you have Wollongong. That's the name of our tribe. All the human remains around Botany Bay were those who belong to the Wollongong tribe. That's the Wollongong tribe. And that's old culture. All right? Then he declared war on the Aborigines. Almost wiped us out. A lot changed. Half-caste people. All right? Our blood changing. They got dialects, different dialects than the pure dialect. Some of them are crossed with others. Okay? And they'll have a certain distance range when they talk, where they can go. Some of them could be up to 100 miles. And they could be stretched along the coastline, the whole family. So us, as Wollongong, coming down from the Timber line, we come from La Perouse, Wadba, the country near Bear Island, Kurrawa. And we only have 100 miles in either direction walkabout. Our totem is a crow from Pemulwuy. You know how far the crow flies? He only flies 100 miles. So 100 miles would take us to the Shellhaven. And down there the dialect will change for us. It'll take us to Malatumba. Anyone know where Malatumba is? Malatumba is the original Aboriginal word for Newcastle. All right, then the dialect will change. And up in the Whale Lakes, All through there, they still had different clan groups. The Gummingingul, the Garrawarigal. Okay? Up there they got Miami and the ways of Miami. It taught us the ways of marriage and law a very, very long time ago. And we're the last of the Botany Bay Aborigines. And that's why I'm here today. So you got the right bloodline. Now King Thumble, he used to live here, just up at San Susi. And he lived up there with King Quimman. And he lived there with Botany tribe here. And he used to work on the gates, toll gates and things like that, in Moore Park and different areas. They done fishing. They took all the cattle, they helped out with all the cattle and moving them out to the cow pastures, down through in Goulburn area, down into the Five Islands. They even put them on ships and send them up to the Clarence. But we are Wallangang tribe. And we still got song, we still got dance, and we make the artefacts. The boomerangs, the returning boomerang and that comes from our tribes. Right here is recorded when the Europeans first come here. You see? Yabban means to sing and dance. The word corroboree comes from us. That's corroboree. Narramang, a style of dance. Now you see the shake a leg, but that's not our traditional way. We've done the stamping and we dance like them fellas up in the top end. You see? So we have a very strong history here in Botany Bay. Yabbans, yabbans, yabbans. And Narramanka River, Narramanka River, Narramanka River, Narramang. And Narramanka River, Narramanka River, Narramanka River, Narramang. Yabbans, yabbans, yabbans. Hey. So we do practice it. We still pass it on. And this is very important knowledge. Because Governor Phillip, he was given a name by all these old Aboriginal chiefs. And the name that he was given was Berrywoogle. And all the men that come underneath Governor Phillip, they are Berrywoogles. And all the women, they are Berrywoogalians. Just like the tribes, I'm Bidjigal. And the women in my family, they're Bidjigalians. Guigals, Guigalians. Camragals, Camragalians, and so on. And that's how this place started. You see? All come into one. And then through that, the government was done. Right? But Berrywoogle's still here. And that's what people don't understand. Because the governor kept going down. He got passed down, passed down, passed down, passed down. Right through from Hunter to Macquarie to all of them. All the way down through to Governor General. He sits out there in Canberra today. You see? And then got the government. And it's been over 200 years. And all the tribes have changed. The dialects have changed. The people have changed. Right? So the Aborigines, what you see through Sydney, we all got that connection going all the way back, but it's in many different ways. All right? So I'm here on behalf of the Wallangang, old Wallangang cultural ways, the old Wallangang people. And that's the way we identify. Tharawal, Tarawal, Daruk and all that, they're all tongue dialects. Okay? And we go in there different ways. Okay? They all still got the connection here. But I'd like to say welcome to country from our original culture, from our original history, with the 3Bridges, 1 in 3, one in every 3 seconds information for all, on behalf of our family, on behalf of our community, and on behalf of all of them, the Camarays, Guigals, Gunyalgals, Wiriari, all of them, because we all come from somewhere. Welcome to Kamay, Botany Bay, Stingrays Bay. All right. Thank you for having us over here. I hope you learned a little bit today. And just open us here, this is my son here, okay, and getting that traditional involvement here from the original bloodlines, okay, so then it gives you that information on the Wollongong. It gives you all that information going back and you can think about it. So when you look at the history, you can see how we've all tied in, all right? Now there's many different dialects on this land, not only Aboriginal, but your dialects too, all right? Come through the ways of Berry Woogle. We're all Australian, you see? But we've got many different cultures here, okay? So thanks for having us. We are Wollongong tribe, Wollongong people. Thanks for having us here today. And from me, my son, Glenn, welcome to the land. Thank you.
Could we have another round of applause for Uncle Glenn and young Glenn? Extraordinary welcome to country. It is about history, it's about storytelling, it's about our own stories and about the ones we actually come to hear. I would also like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the land of the Eora people of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, and I pay tribute to Uncle Glenn and the wonderful history he's given to us. And I'd like to also acknowledge the elders of those communities, those past, present and emerging. I also wanted to particularly acknowledge those of you in today's meeting here with a lived experience of living with dementia. It is why we're here today. And I think it's really also important that I acknowledge those of you who are here as carers of people with dementia, who play such an important role. Each dementia journey is different and challenging. When we add a cultural overlay and linguistic issues, it becomes even more fraught, and one that we know in very much our diverse communities. One of the biggest problems we have with dementia is not so much service access, which is an issue for everyone, but it's in the understanding in our own communities, which we still have the challenge. And I think this today about information, about what we do, is going to be extremely important. I'd like to introduce myself to you as well, with a little bit of excitement and quite humble to be here. I cannot express how excited I am when I get invited to speak or to facilitate sessions with what I call real people, people who are in the community, people who are in the local area. There's so much to learn from you, so much to gain from you, and so much wisdom that comes both ways. My role is I am a person who's been working with ethnic communities now for over 40 years. I'm a communicator, a facilitator, a researcher and an advocate. I've been around the aged care area since I was quite young. And one of the things I did, which I thought was always very funny in a sense because of my age, is for 4 years I chaired the Ministerial Advisory Committee on Ageing to the New South Wales ministers. And some people complained and they said I was too young. I always thought that was funny, my own version of ageism. I think the area of how we deal with ageing in Australia, in Sydney, in this area is really critical. You will know that there have been royal commissions. You will know that we get horror stories. We also know that this is one of the sectors which is most poorly paid of all our professions. It is a range of challenges, and therefore we do need to address those and try to overcome them. Today will be very much about that. We'll hear from really, really good people, good speakers with fantastic histories. And no less than I now would love to introduce Amal Madani. Amal will actually formally welcome everyone and give you a bit of background. She is the General Manager of Aged Care and Disability Services in this organisation. She has 18 years experience in the non-for-profit community sector, focusing on dementia and aged care, carer support, team leadership and change management. She is passionate about promoting healthy aging and challenging society's negative stereotypes towards older people. Working for 18 years in an area shows passion, commitment, and a great deal of love. Amal.
Thank you, Pino. It's a true privilege for me to be here today and to see that big number of people from the community, other service providers, distinguished guests joining us today at this event. Why this event is important? Because we actually need to continue the conversation. We need to talk about dementia. We need to talk about older age. There is still a strong sense of ageism, as Pino pointed out, and a strong stigma against dementia. 1 in every 3 seconds, one person gets diagnosed with dementia globally. More than 250 new cases of dementia on a weekly basis in Australia. And we are still, as a society, scared of talking about dementia. That fear, unfortunately, it is caused by lack of understanding. And the lack of understanding is caused by lack of conversation, lack of information, lack of education. And that's why we are running this event. This event is part of the work that St. George and Sutherland Dementia Alliance undertake. And I thank all the members of the Alliance who are with us today. We can't do it on our own. 3Bridges is very much committed to tackle the issues around ageism and to educate the community around dementia and to provide appropriate support for people with dementia. And what I mean by appropriate support, it is support that is actually really designed according to the needs and likes and dislikes and the history of the person who is living with dementia, taking into account what they really want and where they are in life, and consider them the experts in their own life, and of course with the contribution of their family carers. If anyone here is living with dementia who is joining us today, thank you very much for coming. To all the family members of a person with dementia, the journey is not easy, but we as an organization, we aim and we are committed to supporting you, but we can't do it on our own, and that's why we work very closely with other service providers. 3Bridges in general, we aim and we are committed to create a positive impact in the lives of people, regardless of what condition they experience, from early years to older age. We focus on older age because we're all getting older, and I would like to know, I'm getting older, and I would like to know that if I need support, when I get to that stage where I need support, I want that support to be provided to me with my dignity preserved. And that's what we are committed to do. Okay, we have so many programs to support older people. We focus on social support, okay, groups to get the older person and the person with dementia out of their home and get them engaged in a meaningful, purposeful way in the community. I think as a society, unless we work together to provide that purposeful engagement, there's no point in getting the person out of dementia and getting them to sit at a group, okay, unrecognized to some extent. It's not about providing them with morning tea and lunch. Okay, it's much more than that. We need, as a society, to create opportunities for people living with dementia and older people in general to be engaged in their own community in a meaningful, purposeful way. And that's why we work close with other service providers to do that. I want to extend my special thanks to Paul Sadler, who is the expert in aged care. I won't be touching on what's happening in the aged care sector. There's a lot happening, and I think Paul will expand on that. It's very chaotic at present. It is very chaotic even for service providers who are trying to make sense of what's happening. However, as a service provider, if whatever information is shared by Paul doesn't necessarily click, or you need more information or more details, we are here for you. Please give us a call. 3Bridges, we have a team of, we call it My Aged Care Team, okay? Just to support the older person with information and go through the journey of that, you know, the aged care system that is already confusing as it is. All right. In terms of dementia, it is with absolute excitement to say that we will be, as an organization, reinstating a program that won the National Award in Innovation in Dementia Care. It used to be called the Meeting Center Support Program, which we brought from the Netherlands. It is a perfect example of how the care that respects the dignity and the likes and dislikes and the history of a person living with dementia can be preserved. We will be running this program in Summerhill with a different name. Please watch that space, okay? But we also run fabulous dementia programs that cater for a person with mild, moderate, and even advanced dementia. Those programs run in Randwick and Kogarah. It's something that we are focusing on, okay, and we work very closely with other dementia-specific organizations to design the support to be most appropriate for the person living with dementia and their family carers. Enough of me, I can talk for hours about dementia, and I was given only 5 minutes, so I'd better respect that. We will have the pleasure of having Professor Peter Gonski, who will be talking about dementia later on. But I think I want to introduce Rhonda Brown. I'm not sure whether she is with us here. She's there. Rhonda Brown is the manager of social and dementia support programs. Rhonda will be running a group, I think, just to sample some of the activities that we run to cater for older people and people living with dementia. This is Rhonda Brown. Please, if you would like, if you are to some extent intrigued, or you would like to know what it is, or if there is a person who is older and has dementia here in the audience and would like to participate in some of the activity that we'll be running, I think the group, we have a group to your right. Yeah, we have somebody to take you there, and I'm not sure whether we are doing anything here, Rhonda. Rhonda Brown, thank you very much. Thank you.
Maria, where are you? Thank you, everybody. I'm actually, our team leading, I lead a fabulous team who is very privileged to be part of the vision that Amal and 3Bridges have. And as part of our focus on dignity and inclusion, and whether you are a person supporting someone with dementia or whether you have the lived experience of dementia, our groups are about come in and let us share joy with you and share life, and every day is about a day of hope. What we're going to do just now very quickly is in every group, every morning, every session, there is an exercise session. I think it's been built into the program because it's 3Bridges' way of giving gym membership to the staff. If you see the staff, and so they're going to come up the front now and they're going to give you a taste of the morning exercises. We're going to invite all of you to loosen up before we get into some more challenging discussion. Now, where are you guys going to stand? I think you need to spread yourselves where you can be seen. So usually they come in and you need to be in one line together, not separated. Why are you hiding behind the flowers, Andre? What is happening? Oh, you're going to do the music, okay. Can everybody see them? Yes, okay. We invite you to join them. In every session there are slow exercise class. You want them back there? Oh, two here, all right.
It's still in line.
I have a few issues. I like things to match. Are we right? So you're going to go down there? All right. Are you ready? So we normally start with slow exercises to limber up and get warm, and then everyone in our group, all our clients and participants then join. They go from the slower exercises to a slightly faster beat. And we invite you to join in what our clients do in our groups. Are we ready?
Ah, you thought you were going to have a bit of a rest, and we're going to work you out now. Wake up. Hello. You can get up if you like, or you can stay seated, whatever you like. That's great. Looking good. I can see some familiar faces down there. Don't be shy. You can get up too, mate.
Around us, they say, can they be that close? Just let me state for the record, we're giving love in a paradise. We are family. Hey, I got all my sisters with me. We are family.
No.
Get up, everybody, and sing.
I can't do one. We are
Family. I got all my sisters with me. We are family.
arms up.
Get up, everybody, and sing.
Okay, back to the pushing.
Living life is fun, and we just begun to get our share of this world's delight.
All right, show me those chicken arms. Bop, bop.
For the future,
And it goes inside. Keep going. Okay, show me your shoes. Ready?
here's what we call
Woo.
all golden rules.
That's it.
Have faith
Then you are the things you do.
you won't go wrong.
Okay, back to the Macarena. Let's take it out. Ready? Woo. We are. Arms up. Last one. Let's go. Okay, shake it off. Woo! I got all my sisters with me. Woohoo! It's not over. There's two more to go. Two more to go. The next one I think you'll all recognise, and we'll probably know the actions to it. So follow along again.
Let's do it. Keep clapping. I've been around, sing along.
A couple of times and maybe more. Seen the sights, I've had the lights on every foreign shore. But when my mates will ask me the place that I adore.
Okay, get ready to show me your gum trees.
What do we tell them? Give me a home among the gum trees with lots of plum trees. A sheep, a two, a kangaroo, a clothesline out the back, veranda out the front, and an old rocking chair. You can see me in the kitchen cooking up a roast, or Vegemite on toast, just you and me and a cup of tea. Later on we'll settle down and go out on the porch and watch the possums play. Give me
A home among the gum trees with lots of plum trees. A sheep or two and a kangaroo, a line out the back, veranda
out the front, and an old rocking chair. There's a Safeway at the corner and a Woolies down the street, and a brand new place they've opened up and they regulate the heat. But I trade them all tomorrow for a little bush retreat with a
kookaburra sing. Can you do? That's it. Wow.
The gum trees with lots of plum trees. A sheep, a two, a kangaroo, a clothesline out the back, veranda out the front, and an old rocking chair. Up we go. Some people like their houses with fences all around. Others live in mansions and some beneath the ground. But me, I like the bush, you know, with rabbits running round. A pumpkin vine out the back. It's your turn.
Give me a home among the gum trees with lots of plum trees. A sheep or two and a kangaroo, a clothesline out the back, veranda out the front, an old rocking chair. Give me a home among the gum trees with lots of plum trees. A sheep or two and a kangaroo, a clothesline out the back, veranda out the front, an old rocking chair. Oh, give yourselves a round of applause. Hey, wrapping it up. Okay, come on, let's see, shake it, get up. Shake your tail feathers. Woo! And then I saw her face. Now I'm a believer. Not a trace of doubt in my mind. Leave her, I couldn't save her if I tried. Woo! Okay, we're punching now. Not enough film to turn it off. Punch it. I got rain. And then I saw her face. I'm a believer. No, swing! Swim it! Backstroke! I'm a believer, I can see her if I try. I'm in love. Woo, Rodney. There's not a trace of doubt in my mind. Woo! Woo! Woo!
Okay, how do you feel? You feel good? That's right. You feel good. In all paths in our journey in life, there is always opportunity to feel good. And that is our mission and that is our job. On behalf of 3Bridges, we are so privileged to be part of an organisation that wants to share this joy. Now, if you have family members in the room, we've got a small social group, room on the side where they're going to do some floral art and a couple of other activities. If you would like your family member to participate in that, the ladies up the back who thought they were going to sit down, what are you doing? Yes. Here where they can see you. They will lead you out to where the floral art is in the other room. Thank you, and Pino, I hope we haven't disrupted things too much.
I don't know about disruption. I have been to 500 to 1,000 conferences over the last 40 years. I don't think I've had as much fun. It didn't take much to get me up and dancing. I thought sitting there and doing the movements wasn't that good, but when the Beatles, not the Beatles, the Monkeys, came on, I think everyone and how did it unite us? Dance, music, movement. It was just beautiful. Can I just pick up a couple of words I've already heard both Rhonda and Amal speak? Inclusion, dignity, care, thinking about the person, what the person wants. If that's what we're trying to achieve here, there could be no better objective. No better objective. I remember, as I said, I've got a bit of a history of aged care. And I started up the aged care program at COASIT as a volunteer. And I said, if we're going to have a narrative in this organisation, something that we speak to, I'm going to say, we need to allow people to age with dignity. And that word was said again and again. And it's really interesting because that early advocacy then started up aged care packages with people who could speak the languages. And I remember a very important thing to me. I'd started those programs at COASIT, then one day I had to ring COASIT and say, my dad needs an assessment. And my dad got an assessment in Italian. And I thought, if I've done nothing else, that I'm happy. I'm happy. And it's with those words, because it's not just us as advocates, it's the others who have led this field, and I am going to introduce Paul to speak to you. Paul runs Paul Sadler Consultancy. He is an independent chair of Meals on Wheels Australia and a director of Meaningful Ageing Australia. I'm trying to get my breath back. There's a lot to say about Paul, but I'll cut it very short. He's the past national chairperson of the ACSA and chair of ACSA's New South Wales ACT Divisional Council, and a member of other industry and university boards. He's also held government appointments such as membership of the Australian Government's Aged Care Quality and Safety Advisory Council. He has academic qualifications in social work, government and public administration and biblical studies. He is a fellow of the Australian Association of Gerontology. Our keynote speaker today, Paul Sadler.
Well, thank you very much, Pino, and thanks to Amal. I don't know how you follow up dancing and going into a serious conversation about a topic like aged care reform. It was rather nice to have the Monkeys singing I'm a Believer. That was actually written by Neil Diamond, and a great tune and a fantastic way to kick off this morning's session. I'm going to cover the topic by focusing on the current aged care system, because hopefully that will help you identify where you can get help right now. But I'm also going to focus on what's changing in the future. I'll touch on the Aged Care Royal Commission, which happened a couple of years back, some of its key findings, talk about what changes the government and the aged care sector are making in response to the Royal Commission's findings, and focus particularly on the changes to home care that are proposed at the moment. So, the first question many people have is, how do I get into the aged care system when I need help? The government has set up My Aged Care as the mechanism to obtain information, to be assessed for your needs and your eligibility for aged care programs. You can see they've got a call centre, 1800 200 422. A website, and that provides key information about aged care services. There's two different forms of assessment that you can receive. The first is through regional assessment services for basic levels of home support. The second is through the professional aged care assessment teams, which in this state are based in the local health districts, and they assess for higher levels of home care and your eligibility for residential aged care. That is covered by an electronic aged care client record, which is produced by My Aged Care and follows your pathway through the aged care system. That can be accessed by service providers, by consumers themselves, and via assessors through individual portals to the aged care system. The two main forms of aged care are residential aged care and home care. Residential aged care will be familiar to many of you through historically the nursing homes that have provided aged care. They provide personal care and other services to all residents based on assessed need. It's a guarantee of 24-hour care, a community lifestyle with consequent reductions in isolation. Many people who go into residential aged care find the community lifestyle something that they appreciate and indeed often thrive in. There's many stories of people who enter aged care and really come out of themselves because they have people around them. The costs, there's a basic daily fee capped by the Commonwealth Government, and a choice of a lump sum refundable accommodation deposit or daily accommodation payment or a mix. If you can't make those contributions yourselves, the federal government will make a contribution on your behalf and ensure that all people can access residential care irrespective of their ability to pay. All government-funded services must be accredited by the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission, and you have to receive an assessment from the aged care assessment team before you enter. Home care is designed to provide assistance to people who want to remain living at home, but might need assistance to ensure they're safe, comfortable and well. There are two main government-supported home care programs. The first, the Commonwealth Home Support Program, provides entry-level support services for older people who need some basic assistance with looking after themselves at home. The services include very familiar services such as Meals on Wheels. Pino mentioned I'm the new chair of Meals on Wheels nationally. community transport services, domestic assistance, home maintenance, community nursing, other services are provided through the Commonwealth Home Support Program. To be eligible for support from the Commonwealth Home Support Program, you require assessment by a regional assessment service. Then there's the higher level home care packages. This program provides more complex, coordinated and personalised care at home, offers 4 levels of home care package that progressively support people with basic or lower level needs through to quite high level needs. It can include personal care, support services, nursing, allied health and clinical services. And you require assessment by an aged care assessment team to be eligible. Aha, that's a bit better. So what's going to happen in the future with aged care services? I mentioned the Aged Care Royal Commission at the beginning. This held a series of engagements with the community back around 3 to 4 years ago and published their final recommendations about 2 years ago. The Royal Commission identified that there were strengths in the aged care system, but also significant weaknesses, and it identified a series of systemic problems in Australia's aged care system. They felt there was an absence of leadership and governance at a system-wide level. There was insecure and, most importantly, insufficient funding available for aged care in Australia. Financing arrangements didn't ensure sustainability of the system. There was inequitable means testing. There was inattention to the structure of the market and the evolution and local conditions. A piecemeal approach had been taken historically to reform by successive Australian governments. There was variable provider governance, management and leadership, an undervalued aged care workforce. We touched earlier on the fact that the aged care workforce has historically been underpaid compared to their counterparts in disability services and in health. There were problems about ageism, which Amal touched on. There was a reactive model of care, a lack of the voices of older people and particularly diverse communities in the aged care system. It wasn't very transparent what happened, where the money went in the system and what help you're due to receive. There were missed opportunities for research and innovation and poor cooperation across the health and aged care systems. And many of the stories that the Royal Commission highlighted were those of older people who were receiving care but really couldn't get it as effectively as they wanted, because when they transitioned between the health system and the aged care system, there were major problems and a lack of continuity of care across the two systems. So in response to all of this, the Australian government adopted some key reform directions. Those can be summarised as, firstly, giving consumers greater control over how their funding is used. What was called consumer-directed care had been introduced in 2014 into home care packages. In 2017, the funding was assigned to the consumer rather than the provider in home care. And it's proposed in 2024 that that system will be extended to residential aged care. There will, however, be further efforts to make older people pay when they can afford to do so, and the Royal Commission also raised the possibility of an increase in taxation to pay for aged care into the future through an aged care levy similar to the Medicare levy. The government's just announced in the last week or so the establishment of an aged care task force to look at those options in the future. Third piece of reform will be to reconsider how we do assessments in Australia, and having two assessment services, one for low-level care and the other for high-level care, was felt to not be the right way to set that up. And so the various aged care assessment processes are going to be combined into a single assessment system that will come into play in the middle of next year. Further, home care and home support, rather than being funded through two separate programs, are going to be amalgamated and provided through a single home support program, which I'll explain in a little more detail next up. Very importantly, there was going to be tighter regulation of quality of care. There'll be greater transparency on how providers use money in the system, and their regulation via revised quality standards. A serious incident response scheme has been established. A code of conduct for aged care staff was introduced at the end of last year. And there's already been establishment of tougher penalties for failures to provide appropriate care and support. And finally, a major focus which the Labor government has introduced is a strengthening of the aged care workforce, particularly in just a few weeks now. There's going to be a pay rise paid to aged care staff, a 15% increase on the basic award payment for aged care, which has been long overdue. So, I want to just finish off by explaining a little bit about what's going to happen in the future with the Support at Home program. This new program is slated to begin in the middle of 2025. So this is information that is giving you a heads up of what's going to be occurring in a couple of years' time. The new program, as I mentioned earlier, is going to encompass Commonwealth home support and home care packages, but also short-term restorative care and residential respite referrals. There's going to be a discussion paper that proposes a new model for consultation which seeks to improve access to services, better align services to older people's needs, reduce administrative costs, better support independence, make aged care simpler to access, and facilitate innovation in the system. Now, you'll notice that that says the new program commences 1st of July 2024. I took this slide from a discussion paper that the Department of Health and Aged Care put out last year. That 2024 timeframe was changed by the Minister for Aged Care just a few weeks ago, and it was announced that the new program will commence in July 2025. So what will the new program look like? Well, firstly, as I mentioned, there's going to be a single point of access to the new system through the combination of regional assessment services and aged care assessment teams into a single assessment system. So you'll be assessed once for your needs, be they in the home or in a hospital setting. That will determine a support plan which is set up specific to the individual's needs, and that will establish a quarterly budget for ongoing support. The program will be divided into two parts. Firstly, a short-term support for independence. There'll be an assistive technologies and home modifications scheme that is established as a particular subset of the new Support at Home program. And there will be short-term and restorative services that provide quarantine funding for short-term support. The base of the program will include ongoing support at home through the services we recognise already, such as nursing, personal care, allied health, domestic assistance, respite, social support, meals, transport and home maintenance. You'll also be able to obtain assistance from what is going to be called in the future a care partner. And for those of you who receive assistance from a home care package at the moment, you'll be familiar with what's known as your care manager or care coordinator. So in the future, the government is going to adopt a new language, and it's deliberately intended to convey the fact that the system is going to partner with you in the future to help you, guide you through the help that the Support at Home program can offer. Now, I skipped over one important bit. There's going to be specialised support available for people with dementia in the new system. And that will be funded to ensure that people with dementia have particular support to guide them through the home care system the care partner part of the program will particularly assist people with dementia to help you access support. Now, that quarterly budget, just expand on that a little bit, that will be set up according to a classification of need that is established out of the assessment. It will group people with similar characteristics. It's proposed to be split by physical, cognitive and a complexity score. The complexity score adds together frailty, social needs, medical needs and whether you live alone or not. And you can see on the right-hand side of the slide the way in which the new system is proposed to operate with the percentages of the population of older people that in an initial trial fell into the different classifications. The government is at the moment refining this. There's a trial underway with 20,000 assessments nationally using a new integrated assessment tool and testing out whether these classifications will work in the future. So this won't be the final system that's established. There'll be refinement of this model before it's finally adopted.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, certainly.
Does that mean that each client will get an individual budget, which means that it's not going to be a set budget like it is currently?
Yes, that's correct. So at the moment, the system operates at home care package level, you get assigned to 4 levels of care. In CHSP, you're assessed as eligible for a particular service, and it might be an hour of domestic assistance once a fortnight, for example. In this new system, you'll be assessed as needing funding according to that classification structure. and that will result in a level of funding quarterly budget established according to your assessed need. So it's going to be more pay points from the point of view of the provider available in the future, and that should mean we don't have the problem that the current system has, where the 4 levels of home care package, you often are assessed as needing a certain amount of care. You build up, because you don't fully utilise it, unspent funds. So that will be much less of a problem in the new system, because the assessed need will more accurately reflect the level of help you need in the future. The government's also flagged that it potentially will not allow a carryover of funds on the quarterly budget. So you have to try and expend your funds fully within each quarter. Now, the second area that is going to change is the access to assistive technology and home modifications. There's going to be a national loans program set up, delivered through the states and territories. You'll be able to upfront access support with assistive technologies and home modifications. There'll be a series of wraparound services that are available, and a comprehensive list of inclusions and exclusions that will be reviewed over time. This new scheme will be funded separately from the other aspects of the supported home program. Finally, the short-term pathways, just to expand on those a little bit. Early interventions to increase independence and autonomy is the intended purpose of the short-term pathways. They'll take a holistic, person-centred and strengths-based approach to funding, meeting needs whilst being financially sustainable, and reduce reliance on long-term aged care. If you can assist a person to regain elements of their functioning in the community, you can prevent long-term use of services being required. So there will be restorative care services to help that restoration of function and well-being. That will include a restorative coordinator, support for up to 12 weeks with allied health and similar interventions to help people obtain their goals, but also to improve their underlying function. So, for example, a person who's had a stroke will be often provided rehabilitation in a hospital system, but they'll also be able to benefit from a short-term restorative care program, and that service will be time limited, might result in you not needing any help in the long term, but also provide access to longer term support where needed. Time limited home support services can be provided through this system. That's a summary of the changes that are proposed to occur. As I said earlier, it's 2 years off those changes actually being introduced by the government. They'll be trialling certain elements of the new system over the next year or two, and hopefully we, as the community, will be able to participate in trialling that system and refining it to get it right for the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Paul. I won't ask for questions because we're running a little bit out of time, but you'll be here for morning tea. And so if there's anything you'd particularly like to know, I just wanted to, first of all, compliment Paul on taking what is a really complex system and really explaining it well. Yeah, a commendation to you. The other thing I'd like to say, it's really important that if there are consultations, that they are real. Because you've got to consider that when My Aged Care was set up after consultations with ethnic communities, non-English speaking communities, the result was a 1-800 number and a website in English. So we need this to be serious. We know that the called community is ageing at a higher percentage given the post-war migration environment. We know that there are a whole range of issues around the balance between residential and home care. We know the real interest in home-based care services. This has to be made to work for your clients and my relatives, and me soon. Okay, really, really happy to introduce Associate Professor Peter Gonski, who's going to speak to us, who is our second keynote speaker. He is Associate Professor of Medicine and Health in the School of Population Health. He has research interests in aged care, clinical review of various geriatric syndromes and their management. He's also been quite heavily involved around hospital admission and discharge outcomes, which he is studying. There are a plethora of organisations and memberships that Professor Gonski holds, but the ones I particularly want to identify, he's the Director of the Division of Aged and Extended Care in South Care and Sutherland Hospital, Clinical Stream Director, Aged Care and Rehabilitation, South Eastern Sydney Local Health District, member of the ACI Aged Care Division, board member, South Eastern Local Health District, board member, South Eastern Sydney Medicare Local, and examiner for the AMC. Highly qualified, wonderful expert, and who'll be here to talk to us about dementia. Professor.
Okay, good morning. Thanks for inviting me. We have a very long and strong relationship with 3Bridges. I was just saying that we had to sort of send some of our services in some direction, and 3Bridges took them on, which was excellent because the funding changed with regard to the Commonwealth. So we do have a strong relationship with 3Bridges. I've made up this topic because I do a lot of assessments of cognition, and at the end of usually an hour of full assessment of someone, I'm asked, it's not Alzheimer's, is it? Like, that's the worst thing in the world to have. What I want to talk about today is firstly the importance of a diagnosis of dementia, secondly what we do with regard to that diagnosis, how we assess, how we manage, and talk about the ongoing treatments that we are hopefully going to get in the future. So this is the most important slide of my talk, and that is it actually dementia? Because people come to me with cognitive decline or short-term memory loss reported by their families or carers, but it's not always dementia. And we do have to think of other things. Now, very, very eccentric people appear to be maybe dementing, like the 83-year-old who did bungee jumping in Queenstown, New Zealand. I would think that he's a nut, but he actually is just totally eccentric, and if you look at his history, he's been eccentric since he was 20. So that's not dementia. People who are getting older, it is true, their cognitive function does deteriorate, but it's not necessarily dementia unless it's actually having an effect on their or their carers or their families' lives, making dementia a clinical diagnosis. It is not diagnosed by investigations. People who are deteriorating a little bit with their memory, they have mild cognitive impairment. As I say, once it starts affecting their lives, then we move them across into that dementia diagnosis. Deafness is a really interesting one because if you can't hear me, you probably think that what I'm saying is a lot of crap, which it might be. But when you go away from here and you talk to someone, it might be that you didn't quite get what I was saying because you're deaf. And that's not dementia. But we do know that people who chronically are deaf and who don't have any aids to help them, they're more likely to get dementia than people who aren't. So deafness is a significant risk factor for dementia and should be treated. Delirium, which is the most important thing that we need to exclude, and that is an acute deterioration in someone's memory or cognition or behaviour, acute deterioration, as distinct from a chronic deteriorating condition, which is dementia. And this is the most important differentiation that we have to make in our diagnosis, because if we miss the boat, particularly when people are coming into hospital emergency departments and they're acutely confused, if we miss the boat, we might go down the wrong track. So I've had to assess people in aged care facilities 3 months after they're discharged from hospital, and the nursing staff say to me, why is this person in a nursing home? Well, 3 months ago, they were totally confused, and now they're on the ball. Why is that? Because someone missed the diagnosis of delirium. So it's a reversible condition in 80% of people, and we must not miss it. Now, there are some mental state problems that people have that also look like dementia, but they're not necessarily dementia. I had an 84-year-old come into hospital with a history from his GP of deteriorating cognition and dementia. That night, the first night he was in hospital, he was very, very ill. When the tray came into his room for dinner, he took his knife and started slashing his wrists. He was not demented, he was depressed. We gave him shock therapy and he walked out of that hospital on his own, and he lived another 3 years dying from cancer, not from depression or dementia. It is a condition we do need to exclude, as is some other less common mental state problems, such as mania and late onset schizophrenia. So delirium is of recent onset. Dementia is a chronic condition. People with delirium tend to have very poor attention span, whereas a lot of people with dementia, you can talk to them, you can have a lovely conversation. They may not know where they are or a lot about what's been happening to them in the last week, but you have a completely different aspect to them. People with delirium, they fluctuate through the day. So the morning they might be terrible and the afternoon they might be much better, or vice versa. Whereas people with dementia, they're often worse in the afternoon, that's called sundowning, but they're often every day worse in the afternoon. So that you don't get that fluctuation so much within a day where they can be good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. And finally, delirium is a reversible condition, but one of the very significant abnormalities is this reversal of the sleep-wake cycle, when people with delirium often sleep during the day and they're awake during the night. It's a pathological problem, and yet people with dementia, they also may not sleep during the night, but often they don't sleep during the day either. So there's a real difference there, and it's really important that we make that difference and work that diagnosis out. Dementia is a clinical diagnosis. I can't stress that enough. It is diagnosed by us talking to a person and their families and doing some tests. But those tests are often talking to the person. It's a clinical diagnosis which may have memory loss, behavioural change, personality change, and decreased ability to function independently. It is often associated with hallucinations which tend to be visual, and in some conditions such as Lewy body dementia that some of you might know about, they are very specific visual hallucinations where they see people, often small people or animals. People with dementia, they may wander, they certainly lose their insight, and they don't think there's anything wrong with them. So the next question is, this person has dementia, what type of dementia they have? And here is where the classic differentiation between Alzheimer's disease and dementia. We make a diagnosis of dementia, then we try and make a diagnosis of what type of dementia. So dementia is an overall term of what I've talked about, the types of dementia, of what's the actual pathology going on in the brain. And although Alzheimer's is the commonest, and still the commonest, we do see a lot of what we call vascular dementia, which is basically due to mini strokes. And I think personally, particularly in the older population, that we're actually seeing a combination of vascular disease and neurodegeneration, which is Alzheimer's disease, as a combination in most of these people. So when people say they've got Alzheimer's disease, they probably got, if they're very elderly, they've probably got a combination of mini strokes plus Alzheimer's disease. But there are other types of dementia. In fact, there's 200 types of dementia, which I clearly don't have time to talk about today. But the other common ones are with Parkinson's disease, and that's often associated with a condition called Lewy body disease, which is very specific. And I love Lewy body disease because I can make that diagnosis. Everyone thinks I'm an amazing doctor because I made that diagnosis because they've never heard of it. And then they go off to the internet, of course, and Dr. Google and all the others, and they come back and say, you know what, you're right. That's exactly what we think. Okay, frontotemporal dementia, not that common. If we diagnose a person less than 65 years old, we often think about frontotemporal dementia because it's more often in that age group, in the under 65s. It's a completely different condition. Alzheimer's disease, people present with memory loss and orientation abnormalities. People with frontotemporal dementia, they present with change in behaviour, possibly change in their affect. They might be agitated, they might be manic, they may be depressed. So it's a completely different presentation, but it's all dementia. Alcohol, particularly in Australia, lots of alcohol in Australia. We always have to think that that's a contributory cause and also maybe the underlying cause in some people with dementia. But I have to stress that we're allowed to say that people have got more than one pathology. So they might have Alzheimer's and vascular. They might have Alzheimer's and Lewy body disease. That's for us to sort of sort out. Is it important? At the end of the day, it probably is important because we can understand the condition. So if you understand Lewy body disease and the symptoms of why is this person seeing animals, it's not because they're schizophrenic and there's something wrong with their brain. From that point of view, they've actually got this condition. And if we understand that, we can explain it to the families. They understand it better, which means that they can manage the people better. But also our drugs can be basically specific for those particular types of dementia. Now, we then go on and do medical examination, and we do a general medical examination looking at people's blood pressures and their hearts and their chest, and we listen to all those things and do a full neurologic examination. It helps us to make a diagnosis of the type of dementia. Then we do lots of mini-mentals. Everyone knows about mini-mentals, particularly the Falstein mini-mental. It's out of 30. Just a warning is that if someone does really well in a mini-mental, it doesn't mean they don't have dementia, and if they do really badly, it doesn't mean that they have dementia. In fact, the mini-mentals are quite good for pure Alzheimer's disease. They're terrible for things like frontotemporal dementia, vascular dementia. There are other ways that we can diagnose that. So mini-mentals are really tools. They're not diagnostic of a condition, and we have to look at the whole person to make that diagnosis. And sometimes we get the help of neuropsychologists who do full psychometric testing, and then we sit around and we talk about the conditions and see whether we can come up with a proper diagnosis. Now, there are lots of investigations we could do. Geriatricians are very cheap for the government because all we really do is a few blood tests and a scan. Now, MRI is probably the best scan in Sydney at this point, but there are lots of other scans. CT scans, a screening test. It's not as good as MRI. We're now sending people for what we call FDG PET scans, which are fairly useful in diagnosing Alzheimer's disease, but doesn't help us in the other types of dementias. So it's only specific to a person who we think has Alzheimer's disease. And now we've got one amyloid PET scan in Sydney, which is only $2,000 per scan. Hopefully we're going to get more scanners. But amyloid PET is really, really sensitive for amyloid. Now, amyloid is the abnormality, the protein abnormality in Alzheimer's disease. So if we think someone's got Alzheimer's disease, we would hope in the future we'll send them for amyloid PET. Now, if you've got lots of amyloid in your brain on amyloid PET, It doesn't mean you have Alzheimer's dementia, because you may not have dementia, you may be absolutely normal. It just means you have a predilection for Alzheimer's disease. But if you have dementia and you've got a lot of amyloid in your brain, then you're likely to have pure Alzheimer's disease versus a mixed or a vascular dementia or something like that. Now we're moving towards doing lumbar punctures on people, and the reason only we're doing that now is that there are some drugs that are specific for Alzheimer's disease that are being used in America particularly and other parts of the world and have now come to Sydney but are not here yet. So don't let anyone sort of rush out and go and get them, and I'll talk a little bit about them in a moment. But to get them, we have to do a lumbar puncture, which is a spinal tap, which means a needle in your back, having taken fluid off. We need to get some type of significant scanning, such as an amyloid PET or an FDG PET, and we put it all together and say this person has Alzheimer's disease, therefore they can have Alzheimer's treatment. But if we find that they don't have Alzheimer's disease, they've got vascular dementia or frontotemporal dementia, they are not going to get the new treatments. So what are the treatments? Well, the most important thing is to have the right diagnosis. So firstly, does the person have dementia? And if they do have dementia, do they have Alzheimer's or do they have something else? Because if we don't know that, then our specific treatments which are coming will not be of any use to us. Now, I cannot stress enough that the most important treatment of dementia is support. Support to the person who has dementia and to the people around them who are supporting that person who has dementia. And so person support and carer support are much more important than the treatment that I can provide through medication. It is really, really important. And now people are starting to look at rehabilitation for particularly mild Alzheimer's disease, mild dementia, and this is really, really important in the early stages of dementia. We do need to review their driving. That's the really big thing because people don't want to lose their licence. We have to make sure when they're still mild that they do a power of attorney, enduring guardian, a will, and they think about their future as to what type of treatment do they want when they can't make decisions for themselves, because people around them are notorious for not making great decisions for them. So it's best they think about it before they are unable to make decisions. Carer support is so important. The education of what is dementia, what is Alzheimer's disease. And Dementia Australia is a fantastic resource for us. And of course, My Aged Care and all the things that they present and the community services, the community packages, ultimately all the support services and also ultimately, obviously, aged care places that people go to are all important through My Aged Care. But, you know, lifestyle changes are also really, really important. And at the end of my consultation, I say that someone's got dementia and possibly vascular dementia particularly, and I say, you know what the best treatment of this is? Limit your alcohol, stop your smoking, make sure your blood pressure's okay, make sure your diabetes is under control, go and do some exercise and try and socialise. And they look at me and say, well, that's not very medical, is it? But you know what? It is so important. And I cannot believe that I came from seeing a patient this morning, a new patient to me who's 76, who drinks like a fish. And all I could say at the end of my consultation is, you know what? If you keep on drinking like that, you will definitely have dementia, even though you don't have dementia today. And he looked at me and said, I still like drinking. And I said, well, it's over to you now. It's your decision. And it's incredible that after a whole hour of talking to someone and them talking to me and me talking to them, I can come up with that treatment. But that's the treatment. And I will see him in 6 months and he'll still be drinking, I'm sure. Okay, so lifestyle changes and the proven evidence, particularly overseas, with the fantastic evidence of exercise and socialisation, good diet, restricting alcohol, stopping smoking and all those things is absolutely exceptional and much better than many of the drugs that we can provide. And now medical treatment. So just a minute about exercise. Exercise, we all used to say 20 minutes walking every day, fantastic, out in the sun so you can reduce your osteoporosis through getting vitamin D to your skin. and also you're going to exercise, and it's really, really good, and that's enough. But it's not enough. It's very, very good evidence that muscle strengthening exercise are really important, and that means doing weights and riding bikes, even stationary bikes, and doing all those sorts of things really, really helps the blood getting around and reduction of the progress of dementia. But it also improves frailty, really, really important. So exercise is so important. And the sun, and if you can do it in groups, there's very good evidence that group therapy is much better than individual therapy, and that's partially due to socialisation. And socialisation itself has been shown to be of great benefit in the progress and reducing the progress of dementia and frailty. So now I leave one of my last slides. So I've talked about all of that, and I'm a doctor, and I'm meant to provide medical treatment, but it's not about that. It's about a holistic approach, building up partnerships with all our partners, including people like 3Bridges, and working together and looking after all our people with dementia. So medical treatment, there's really four major treatments. We've used for 20 to 30 years cholinesterase inhibitors. There's Aricept or donepezil, there's galantamine, which is called Reminol, there's rivastigmine, which is an Exelon, which is a patch. We've used them for many, many years. What do? Well, in a third of patients, they might slow the progression. In a third of patients, they might improve things a little bit. In a third of patients, they're not very well tolerated or they do nothing. So they're not great drugs, but we still use them because that's about all we've got. For more significant dementia, the moderate dementias, we have this drug called memantine. The great thing about memantine, it's got hardly any side effects. It doesn't do much, but it hasn't got many side effects. So it's not a harmer, so I quite like that one. Suvinade has been used by a lot of people with early dementia. There's a lot of evidence that all these minimal small proteins, there's multiple amino acids or small proteins in Suvinade. It's a drink, 1 drink a day. It's said to be cheaper than coffee, but most people don't stop their coffee. But anyway, they have their Suvinade and every day, and some people swear by it, some people feel it does nothing. Obviously, it doesn't cause any side effects, which is good, but the evidence is quite good in early dementia and slowing the condition. Now, what's coming in now is these monoclonal antibodies, which you're going to hear about, and I've written 2 down there, and the top one is probably the one we're going to get. The problem with these drugs are they have to be given intravenously. They have to be given every second week. If you're making progress with them, you have to keep on them every second week, just about forever until you start deteriorating. So it's not an easy drug. It's not by taking them by mouth every morning or putting a patch on. But we also have to make sure that these people are the right people to get them, and they are the ones with predominant Alzheimer's disease, not vascular, not Lewy body disease, not the other types of dementia. So we have to put them through those amyloid scans or the PET scans and the lumbar punctures. So that all has to be done beforehand. So, you know, it's all very well, these drugs are coming, but they're not easy to actually start up because you have to go through all these tests, then you've got to do the intravenous, and there are significant side effects with some of these drugs in some people. I won't talk about them anymore. And finally, and then these are really important, the antidepressants and the antipsychotics, because a lot of people with dementia have depression, and we can improve them a little bit with antidepressants, but these things need to be reviewed because they can actually make people worse and they can actually cause side effects, so we have to be careful with them. Antipsychotics, which many people would say are the no-no in dementia, antipsychotics such as risperidone, which has had the most press, they can be excellent drugs if used by the right people, in the right people, for a short period of time with the right dose. Some people absolutely do fantastically with them by